Welcome to the NHL Wraparound podcast featuring Neil Smith, President General Manager of the 1994 Stanley Cup champion New York Rangers, and longtime ESPN NHL veteran Vic Morren. Together, they share no-nonsense opinions on news and issues around the National Hockey League. Whether you're a casual or diehard fan, each episode of NHL Wraparound will leave you more informed. Now, here's your hosts, Neil and Vic.
This is the NHL Wraparound Hall of Fame edition. Vic Morren, along with Neil Smith. This is the third in this franchise series. Our first two featured Scotty Bowman and Pierre Turgeon. And today we have a guest who is synonymous with the city of Detroit and someone, Neil, you know well over 4 decades.
Yeah, I sure do. And we have the pleasure of having Steve Yzerman on the show, which is a great thrill for both of us. Steve, thanks for doing this. We met when you were 18 years old, and I got to tell that story. I don't know if you remember it, or maybe I've reminded you of it so many times. We met in a little motel room in Portland, Oregon.
Exactly. Yeah. Gus Badali was my agent, and he brought me out to Portland watch Memorial Cup. I think Jimmy D might have been there as well.
Yeah, he was there too. Yep.
Jimmy was there, but I remember that. Yeah, 1983, spring of '83.
Memorial Cup was in Portland, and the Winterhawks actually won it with Cam Neely on the team that year with Yaremchuk and some other names.
Right. Yeah, they had a great team. Alfie Turcotte was on that team. There was a bunch of drafts. Was it Red Deer was there as well? The Sutter twins were on that team.
Yep, you're right.
Pat LaFontaine was in Verdun, and then Oshawa. Johnny McLean was with Oshawa.
Yeah, and
beat us in the second round. We got a bye in the first round, and I think we got swept by Oshawa in the second round.
And Stevie, I gotta mention 2 other things. One is that I didn't know what to ask you because I was very young myself. I wasn't as young as you, obviously, but I've got to interview a player that for the draft, and I go like, okay, what should I ask him? And I go, why do you wear 19? Do you remember me saying that at all? Because
I do not know, but I'm pretty sure I know the answer.
You'd know the answer. But I said to you, why do you wear 19? And Vic, Steve's answer was because Brian Trottier is my favorite player, and I hope if you draft me, I can wear 19 there too. And I thought, to this day now, it's sort of laughable that here's this young kid really said this to me, and now we know how the story unfolded.
Well, I did get to wear number 19 because Randy Ladouceur got sent to. He wore 19 the year before, and he started the season in Adirondack at the time, so 19 was available, and they gave it to me. And then Laddie came up shortly after and got 29.
Well, all I thought about, of course, was Paul Henderson at the time because he was the Red Wings' famous number 19 at one time.
Right.
The last thing from me about your junior days, Steve, is the Cooperalls.
I hated them. They were terrible. Both years, got severe Charlie horses from the pads. Was out for like 3 weeks, 2 years in a row with them. But I couldn't get comfortable in them. They didn't feel right. They didn't. I didn't mind the look so much, but just they just weren't comfortable. I was a bad era of hockey.
So for anybody that is younger than retirement age, Cooperalls were hockey pants that went all the way down to your skates and covered up the shin pads and everything. And they looked like you had sweatpants on. They're actually, I think, what the linesmen and referees wear now. I think they wear Cooperalls.
Similar, probably, yeah. Very similar.
And in the NHL, of course, Steve, Philadelphia and Hartford were both wearing them at that time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, our whole league, I think it was mandated. I think the whole league wore them for a few years.
Yeah, and I remember you well with those on because that was that draft year. But Steve, getting back to your upbringing and stuff, you're born in Cranbrook, British Columbia, but then you end up in the OHL. Can you tell us how that happened?
Well, I was born in Cranbrook. My dad worked for the provincial government in British Columbia. We moved actually from Cranbrook, I don't know, maybe when I was 7 or 8 to Kamloops, and I was playing hockey in Kamloops. And how we ended up in Ottawa is my dad took a job in Churchill, Manitoba. And I don't know if you know or heard of Churchill, Manitoba, but it's up on the Hudson Bay, and it's the polar bear capital of the world. Anyway, my parents went up to find a home, and they came back. My mom was like, "I'm sorry, we're not moving to Churchill. You got to find another job." And he found a job in Ottawa. And as little kids, we were more excited to go to Churchill because we were worried we didn't speak French, and we thought everybody in Ottawa, I'd never been to Ottawa before, we thought everybody spoke French in Ottawa, and we're like, we don't speak French. So we were kind of excited to go, out to Churchill, Manitoba. But anyway, a detour, and we ended up in Nepean, which at the time was, independent of the city of Ottawa, and grew up in Nepean and got drafted. Was playing Tier 2 for the Nepean Raiders, and then got drafted as a 16-year-old by the Petes, by Dave Dryden, and ended up playing in the OHL.
And it's you never look back ever since, but it's funny that people would associate you with Ontario when really that story there is, I didn't even remember all of that. I just knew you were born in Cranbrook, but I didn't know all that journey.
Yeah, no, started playing hockey in Cranbrook. Actually, I went a couple years ago there. It was actually the 19 draft year. Went back to they had the junior team in Cranbrook for that year, the Kootenay Ice, that I think Peyton Krebs was on that team. I was in there just doing some scouting. Went they're playing a new rink, but went to the old arena that I went to my first hockey school at. If you remember old Philly goalie, I think it was Philly goalie Doug Favell.
Yep.
Yeah. I went to his hockey school in Cranbrook, and I went into the rink, and it was actually really well maintained, but it looked identical to when I was there as a little boy. But that's where I started to skate anyways.
Steve, you were selected 4th overall in 1983, and very early in training camp, it was determined that you were going to stay with the big club. Was that something that you had expected coming up, first training camp, and obviously a very new environment for you?
No, not at all. I honestly, I didn't know what to expect. I hadn't been on the ice at all. The only NHL player I'd been around was Bobby Smith, who a couple of times in Ottawa came out to our summer skates, just a bunch of junior guys, and got on the ice with him. And Bobby's 6'4", and so I had no expectation or what to think of when I left Peterborough. Just Lane Lambert and I. Lane was a second-round pick. We both came to camp. I'm not sure if at that time, Neil, if we brought all the kids, like today we bring all the kids in. I don't know if they brought all the draft picks in. I can't really remember. But Lane and I, we didn't really know what to think. And we just practiced every day and played the preseason games. And next thing you know, like I did know, as Neil would remember, and Jimmy D just said, like basically you got a job. It's your job to lose, because they needed players. I think Kelly Kissio was maybe a late signing. There was a center position there available. I thought the preseason was okay, and then we got into the regular season and got off to probably a better start than I could have ever imagined. But no, so going in, let's see what happens here. And like I said, I just hadn't had any really interaction with NHL players other than being on the ice a couple of times with Bobby.
I think what happens in those situations back then was that the new regime, because that was Jimmy's first draft, was you, and him and his regime, and me being part of that. You want to prove that you can get some good young players and that you're going to rebuild this thing through the draft. And look at this, we've already got these two guys. And Lane Lambert, actually, Steve, and Jimmy probably has told you this 1,000 times, the only reason we got Lane Lambert was because St. Louis sat the draft out that year. Right? They didn't attend the draft because Ralston Purina had a issue going on with trying to sell the team. So when we got Lane, we actually had him in as a first round pick going somewhere. And so when he showed up at our pick, which would have been, how many teams are in the league then? I don't know, but
21. So there would have been 20, and he was picked 24, right? That would make sense.
Yeah. So that's right. So we ended up getting him. So now we had what we thought of as two young NHL players, even though Lane had the eye injury in Saskatoon, which sort of dropped him down a little bit as well. But going on from there, of course, you go through Nick Polano as your coach, and then Nick gets let go, and in comes Jacques Demers from St. Louis Blues. And Jacques and Jimmy D name you captain in October of '86. You're only 21 years old. And I have a picture up on my screen of you and Jacques Demers, actually, Jacques putting a jersey in front of you with the C on it.
Right.
Were you terrified? Like, what were you thinking? You're following Danny Gare. You're going to be captain of an NHL team.
Yeah, actually, Jacques called in the summer and just let me know that this was what he was doing, and it was very exciting, to be named captain of the Red Wings at an early age. And I was very excited, very proud. Looking back and as a manager now, I'm like I wouldn't name a young kid captain of a team. I think you give it to an older guy. Young players, there's a lot going on in your mind. You're trying to establish yourself. You're trying to, mature as a young man and establish yourself as a player and figure things out. I think, but it was good. One, it really made me, focus, make sure I practiced hard and all that. But it was a real honor for me, and I was able to finally hang on to the C and eventually win a Stanley Cup with this being the captain as well. And
Steve, leadership is a topic we could talk about forever in sports, is so important. But obviously at 21, you had to learn how to lead, what that meant to be the captain of an NHL team, what role that meant for you, and who helped you with that? Like, there must have been some players during your early years of being captain that sort of helped you guide the way. For sure. You know what? Like, Colin Campbell was a teammate. He was on our team in 83, 84, and then he was an assistant coach. He was a real and a great influence just on me, a person that I've remained close to and always kind of seek guidance from and pick his brain and whatnot. But he was, in his own way, a real good role model for me and somebody that could kind of guide me along as my first couple of years as a player, but also when he went into coaching. And that's when I was first named captain. But initially, Jacques gave me the C. Like, he was, for me, tremendous. Gave me a lot of responsibility. Really on and off the ice, and my play took off, I guess. I don't know. I wasn't a big scorer in junior, like in relative terms to the guys who were the big scorers. In Peterborough, we really kind of stressed a two-way game. Dave Dryden and Dick Todd as our coaches, we spent a lot of time in practice on the defensive side of things, individually and as a team. So when I came to Detroit, that Jacques started to use me on the penalty kill and to win, face-offs in the D zone. And then the offensive part kind of took off, which was kind of unforeseen by me anyways.
You had, as you'd mentioned, some enormous years from 87-88 to 92-93, 550-goal seasons. You had a career best 65 goals, 90 assists, 155 points in 88-89. You're one of only three players in the history of the league to have at least 155 points in the season. Gretzky and Lemieux, of course, the other two. But there wasn't a lot of team success in terms of advancement in the playoffs. And Scotty Bowman arrives in 93, and he has a conversation with you. And we actually asked Scotty about this in the show that we did with him earlier in September, that your numbers may drop. And you talked about the 200-foot game that you played in juniors. And what was that discussion with Scotty like when he said, you may have to sacrifice some of the offense for the betterment of the team?
I remember it really well, sitting in his office. And I can't remember, I think it was around 95. We had lost in 93 in the first round of Toronto in 7 games, where I think we were a first-place team. And then in the next year, again, that was Scotty's first year as coach, again, losing 7 games to San Jose. And then I think we had a lockout, and we had a 48-game season in 95. Yeah. And we were skating prior to the lockout in September. And Scotty, Dave Lewis, Barry Smith were our coaches. And at the start in September, they said, guys, this isn't working. We can score goals. We're going to become the best. Our goal is to be the best defensive team in the league. And I can't remember, it was when we came back, season started in January. We played a 48-game season. Can't remember if it was that year or the next season, 95, 96. But Scotty came in and he said what he wanted. He said, I believe we got enough scoring on this team, enough talent on this team. We're going to score goals. He said, I want to be able to put a line out there that I can count on in key situations to know that they're going to be responsible defensively. He said, I had a similar situation, a similar conversation with, I believe it was Jacques Lemaire when he was in Montreal with this team, that he wanted a reliable, solid two-way center. And that's the role he wanted me to play. And, it was good. It was great. Our team went on and we didn't win the cup that year, but we were finalists, semifinalists, then 2 in a row and a competitive team all the way through. But again, it kind of got me back to being what I think I was, kind of the type of player that I was when I came into the NHL. And what I did learn from him, maybe indirectly from it all, and you generate a lot of offense from being on the right side of the puck. Like offensive players, particularly younger, you just want to go. You want to go, you're anticipating, you take off. Changed the game a lot where I ended up having the puck even more, right? Because you were down low and you were starting maybe from a more of a standstill at times. But it was a good adjustment because we stress this now. And when I was working with John Cooper in Tampa, I stress it. Our coaches here stress it. And you hear every coach in the league now talk about be on the right side of the puck. Play above them. We always used to be. It was always go, get behind. Beat your man, get behind them. And now we're doing the exact opposite. And as a result, we ended up having the puck a lot more. And ultimately, the numbers kind of were reasonable. Ultimately, we had a bunch of good players, and I don't know all those years. Maybe Sergei one year, but all these years we never had anybody in the top 10 in scoring. It was kind of balanced. It was balanced, and we had good teams. But Scotty, it wasn't just necessarily about me. It was about an organizational philosophy to become a defensive hockey team, and we did that, and we all bought in, and we really enjoyed it.
And your most memorable goal, perhaps, in double overtime against St. Louis in 1986?
Maybe the most exciting, that one, but we had to play either 2 or 3 days later in an afternoon game in Game 1 against Colorado. And we lost. We lost games 1 and 2, and we ended up losing in the semifinals after an amazing regular season. So I don't think of that one that much. For me, the most important goal I ever scored was in 97 in Denver in game 2. We lost game 1, and it wasn't a pretty goal. I think I was behind the net and banked it off Patrick's leg and went in, but that turned out to be the go-ahead goal in the third period. I think that was the most important goal I ever scored.
Well, I wanted to go there with the Avalanche rivalry because, as you said, you had to come off that St. Louis series. You went in, had to play Colorado, and got behind the 8 ball pretty early in what became a very emotionally charged series. Probably started with Slava Kozlov running Adam Foote's head into the stanchion. And, of course, then there was the hit by Claude Lemieux on Chris Draper. And you had been a part of many geographical rivalries with the Blackhawks and the Blues and even the Minnesota North Stars going before that. So the Avalanche weren't a geographical rival, but can you explain from your perspective how that just continued to build and kind of froth and met this incredible back-to-back series with them in 96 and 97?
Yeah, we did have, I'm thinking we played 4 or 5 series over the course of my career with them. That was their first year. They moved from Quebec into Denver.
Right, 96.
We didn't play them a lot, didn't know their team that well, and they were relatively young and up and coming. It was either Peter Forsberg's first or second year. We played them, I think, our opening game of the season in Denver. And it was a close game, and very quickly we realized, geez, these guys are pretty good, And anyway, then I think we set a record for wins that year, but meet up with them in the semifinals, and they were a very good team, a lot of talented guys. Valery Kamensky, obviously you got Joe Sakic, Forsberger, their 1-2 centerman, and Kamensky and, Claude Lemieux. He won cups in at Jersey and Montreal at that time, 2 or 3 times. They trade for Patrick. I don't know, would that have been in November or December? I can't really remember.
December.
All of a sudden now they've got like one of the best goalies of all time. So yeah, that series got nasty, violent at times. And then we met up in 97. I don't think we played in 90. Did we play in 98? I'm not sure. We met again in 97. Then they beat us in 99. I think they beat us out in 2000. And then we had a great 7-game series against them in 2002 where they came in and beat us in Game 5. We had to go in there and, facing elimination and beat them in Game 6 and came out and we scored 4 in the first 5 or 6 minutes of Game 7. And the rivalry continued for a long time. And, our paths have changed a little bit now. And the, Red Wings won the Cup again in 2008 and Colorado went into rebuilding and, they won the Cup 2 or 3 years ago there with, Red Wings were in the middle of trying to rebuild our team again. So maybe the rivalry will get there again, but it was tremendous. Like, all the violence and the fights and the brawls and all that, everybody loves to talk about that. But I believe, and I know a lot of these players have played with them on Olympic teams and work with them now in the management side of things. Both really good hockey teams, tremendous talent, and really good games. And I think that gets a little bit lost in all the extracurricular stuff that went on. But I understand that as well.
Stevie, you got to do something that must be amazing to feel, and that is you were the captain of the Detroit Red Wings when they win the Stanley Cup in 1997 after 42 years. They hadn't won it since 1955. What was that feeling? I mean, I know what it feels like to win the Cup after a long time, but for you, the captain, the guy had been there since you were 18 years old, to be the one to skate up and get the Stanley Cup from Gary Bettman, something that Red Wing fans thought they would never see, right? Because they hadn't seen it since 55.
Yeah, that's obviously the highlight of my career. And it was really, with each year that went by, we had good teams and we felt we left, a cup in 95, we could have won the Cup. But 96, we had a tremendous team. We went backwards a little bit, went to the semifinals, and then you're starting to wonder, has our window closed a little bit maybe, But anyway, we rolled through that playoffs and played really well. And to be there in Joe Louis Arena at the time, again, the highlight of my career, to be able to it became a little bit of an obsession. It's something like I had to do this. I need to win a Stanley Cup. I gotta have that on my resume. It's going to be a long life after playing if I don't. But so at the time, it was incredible.
And I think, Steve, too, and maybe you can explain what it felt like for you, the person. We were together on that World Cup team with the Team Canada in 96 that lost in the last few minutes to Brett Hull's high stick and
I agree.
and Mike Richter's
disagrees with us though.
Yeah. Mike Richter's histrionics too was amazing. My own goalie beats me for a ring that year. And you and I talked after that final game a little bit, but Steve Yzerman wasn't the Steve Yzerman of today back then. You hadn't won yet. People wondered, were you ever going to win? And then you ended up showing everybody, yeah, I'm damn well going to win. And you went out and you and Shanny, I think, were both on that team that ended up putting the 2 cups together and the gold medal at the same time. So did that enter your mind too? Like, I know you just said you want to get this on your resume, but did you also want to prove to people, like, I can win?
You know what? A little bit maybe, but it was just something that I wanted to do, that I needed to do, and it was my dream as a little kid. But certainly, that's what happens. You play on good teams or you play in an organization for a long time. If you don't win, as you know, changes are made, whether it's management, coaches, players eventually go, and if you're the captain of the team, they're looking at you, and understandably so. So it was tough there for a couple of years. It's a blow to your ego, a blow to your confidence. And ultimately, we're playing a team sport, and it takes a good team around you. And I learned along the way that all you could do is, do your part, do your job, and hope and count on everybody else to do their jobs. That's how you win in hockey. So, yeah, it was difficult there for a while and an incredible relief. And then all of a sudden we win 97, we win again in 98. And now we're, again, I'm thinking, this is great. I don't need to do anything anymore, but you lose in 99 and now you're just like the rest of everybody. And quickly you've forgotten that memory of winning a cup wears off. And it's like, we got to win another one. In 02, we won got to go to the Olympics and be a part of that, which was incredible, and then come back and win the cup in the same year. So it was a pretty exciting time. It was a fun time.
Steve, I want to double back to the cups in 98 and 02 because as a captain, and now you're a captain for over a decade, and there's a get it factor of you're not only raising the cup, but you're in a position to do something that is truly unique. And you were able to do that in 1998 with Vladimir Konstantinov, who was injured in the limo accident after the 97 Cup. You guys win the Cup in Washington. You hand it to him, and he is pushed around the ice in a wheelchair. And the smile on his face was absolutely spectacular for everybody to see. And then in 2002, Scotty's going to retire, and you take the Cup, and you hand it to him, and Scotty's got his skates on so he can actually skate with the cup. Can you describe how fulfilling those two episodes were for you?
Yeah, well, 98, we're in Washington and, you're in the finals. You're just focused on playing. And we had heard that Vladdy might be coming to the game. Really about 7 minutes or so left in the third. I think we're up by 2, maybe 1. And, up in the corner, you hear like a lot of noise. Fans are up cheering. Initially you're thinking it's a fight up in the stands or something. Yeah. And you look up and it was that Vladdy was right there. Then they brought him right down on the ice. I can't really remember if I gave the trophy to Igor and Slava, and then they gave it to Vladdy. I can't really remember at this time, but to have him on the ice, it was, like a little bit of mixed emotion and the elation of winning, but it was heartbreaking to see this, this warrior, like he's an incredible player, in a wheelchair, and us knowing that he's, probably going to be he was going to be in there permanently. And also it was saddening, honestly, at the time. But Vladdy, to this day, he's still in Michigan. He comes to the games a lot, and he's battled his whole life like he did as a player. In 02, Scotty, the buzzer goes, the game ends, and we're all celebrating. And Scotty, he's in his skates, and he said, "Hey, Steve, I just want to let you know I'm retiring. This is it for me." And it was really, it happened pretty quick. I never saw that coming because truthfully, I thought Scotty would coach forever because he loves it, and that was my impression. He loves coaching. So that was a little bit of a surprise for us, but it was great to see him wheel around the ice on his skates. It was incredible.
Stevie, you were VP for the Red Wings, and when they won the Cup in 08, Nick was the captain. That everybody was weird to see number 5 and the first European captain to win the Stanley Cup. And then you were a VP there. And then after that, you went to Tampa. And you did a great job in Tampa, obviously. And I know you really studied how to do the job. You learned under Kenny Holland and Jimmy D and the Detroit Red Wings. And I've always said that Steve Yzerman learned the craft. He didn't just think because he was a great player he could be a GM. He learned what it took. And tell us about Tampa, because there's your name is missing from those 2 Stanley Cups that they won, but everybody knows your fingerprints were on them.
When I retired, I spent 4 years with Kenny and Jim Nill, Ryan Martin, who came in to the staff. Right, I think my last year in 05, Ryan came in, who's now with the Rangers, and basically come down to the rink every day and just sit with them in the offices or go for lunch and just talk about what was going on around the league, things that happen around the league. just got a chance to sit and see how they ran the organization, sit in scouting meetings, which I'd never done before, sit in free agency on July 1, sit in the office, sit in scouting meetings, how they, both pro and amateur, how they manage it. And then the decision making, how Kenny would go through his, make the decisions, whether it be on signing players, negotiating contracts, just his style and preparation. So it was a great experience for me to learn and to sit and observe and take some time and then ultimately kind of form, my own opinions on, hey, maybe I'll try, bounce my ideas off Kenny on things, and what would you do it this way, or why would, and he would explain his thought. And in a lot of situations, I would try to follow along, or I would say, I see it a different way. I'm going to do it this way. And there's times when I said I should have done what Kenny had said, just listen to Kenny. It would have made my life a lot easier, but it was a great learning experience and it prepared me. But Neil, you lived it. I don't know that until you're actually sitting in the chair, you can think you're prepared, and once you're the guy, it was really eye opening. And with each day that goes by, you get more comfortable. But I'm glad I had the four years to get ready to do it, and went down to Tampa. Working for Jeff Vinnick, who's an incredible man and an incredible owner and a passionate and intelligent, not only businessman, but hockey person as well. He was tremendous to work for. One, we got to start off with Hedman and Stamkos, and you had Marty St. Louis still on that team, Vinny LeCavalier. You had a lot of good pieces to work with. So I felt like we got off to a good start, and we were able to kind of, I don't want to say build it through the draft, but for the most part, that Kucherov was a draft, Point was a draft, Cirelli was a draft, and I really got to credit Al Murray and his scouting staff at the time for that, because for me to sit here and say, hey, I drafted this guy or not, that was their job to do that, and they did an excellent job with it. And when I left in 19. Julian Brisebois took over. He was more than ready to do the job and made some changes and brought in some guys that put them over the top. And they won 2 in a row, lost in the finals in Game 6. Could have won 3 in a row there, but it was a great experience. I really enjoyed it and met a lot of very close friends and built great relationships down there.
And Andrei Vasilevsky was one of those players that was drafted also, and in addition to Kucherov, Point, Cirelli, they're all still on the team. You'd also drafted Andre Palat, signed undrafted players like Yanni Gordon, Tyler Johnson, and through trade, Ryan McDonough, Mikhail Sergachev, and Eric Chernak. But the bottom line is, it took them 10 years from the time that you got there to get that first Stanley Cup. And as we know, the Wings have been without a playoff berth since 2016, and fans all over the place, they're impatient. But as I said, it took a decade. And the question I have is building a team now different than it was 15 years ago when you stepped into the role with the Lightning?
There's 32 teams now. It's just the talent pool is spread out again even more. I think that's the difference. It's harder to get players. We're all competing for the best players. Now, you don't think two additional teams is a lot, but just over the course of time, I don't know that it's more difficult, because I think it's always been difficult to build a really good team. There's some luck involved in it as well. Really, the reality for most teams, and I don't know if it should take 7 years, 10 years, 15 years. I don't know the exact, and to sit here and, have a plan to say this is the year we're going to be really good. You can do that after a few years when you see what you have in your system coming, and you think, and even then it's, try to pinpoint it is difficult, but it's just a challenge for everyone. I'm starting my 7th season as the manager in Detroit, and sitting here in the preseason, and we're watching a lot of these kids that were drafted in 20 and 21 looking like, hey, they're ready to play now. But for the most part in hockey, we're drafting at the age of 18. And it's really 5 years later, the majority of them, that's when they're finishing junior, finishing college, maybe spending a year or two in the minors. That's when they're hitting your roster. And then a couple years later, they're impacting your roster, not just playing. They're difference makers. So let the players develop at their own rate or on their own time frame. You give them all the tools to develop. You give them all the guidance you can to develop, and ultimately, that player's got to put the work in to do it and have the desire and the mental toughness to go through all the things that a player has to go through to make it to the NHL and then stay in there. And that's the one part of, and Neil scouted for a long time, is trying to find those kids that really have that drive and that mental toughness to grind it out day after day, year after year to get there. And that's the hard part. And you find that out when you own them already, not you own their rights, and not when you, prior to drafting them. It's hard.
Steve, last thing from me, and then we'll wrap this up. But when I was a GM, there was 21 teams, and 16 made the playoffs. Right. And now there's 32 teams, and 16 make the playoffs. It doesn't take a mathematician to understand that means only 50% of the league makes it and 50% doesn't make it. If you end up on the dark side of the moon in the part that don't make it, the fans are pissed off. And it's never seemed fair to me that the NHL Original Six was 2/3 made the playoffs, 4 out of 6. We stayed with that 2/3 for a long time. But to put it down to 50% and have half the team's fan bases pissed off every year just doesn't seem right to me. And the pressure that's on the managers like yourself, on the presidents, on the coaches, as you said, with the same talent pool. I just wondered what your feelings are on that. Not to be critical of anybody at all, but just as a manager, it's got to be frustrating because, there are teams that should have been playoff teams last year, but they weren't because there aren't enough spots.
Right. Good teams miss the playoffs. That's the reality. Good teams miss it. We've had, at GM meetings, we've talked about, expanding playoffs and the pros and the cons. What I will say is our regular season is really important. And it's I think is really exciting because every game really matters. Like every single point matters. Like just getting to a shootout or getting to overtime, you get that point. It's like, okay, we're moving forward. The positive about having 16 teams, it's made our regular season really important. The wild cards, from year to year, you can get in. It is hard to make it. I think that's a good thing. It would be obviously nice to have your name on. You're a playoff team every now and then. Like makes life easier. Our fans, they want to see the team win. They want to get in the playoffs. The media wants it. We want it. Expanding it, I have mixed feelings about it. I would love to get in the playoffs, but I'm happy with the system that we have, our playoff system. I'm fine with it. I think our league is doing really well. I think our regular seasons are really exciting down the stretch. These games, we're living and dying with every goal, every call, and whatnot. So I'm okay with it, and it's people don't want to hear it, but it's hard to make the playoffs, and I think it's a good thing. But business wise, I think you could make a lot of cases for increasing it. But I think our league is outstanding right now, and has so much momentum, and we made significant changes. In 2005, it's 20 years ago already, and at some point, for whatever reason, things will have changes to the game. But I think it's really good right now. Our league is tremendous.
Well, we talked about you winning the Stanley Cup after 40-something years of drought, and I met you 42 years ago. And gosh, it seemed we got to be old.
Unreal.
Yeah, it is.
Right. I think you were an old man too back then. I was this 18-year-old kid. You were just a young guy. Now here I am. I'm 60 years old. Imagine what these kids think of me.
Yeah. Well, Steve, thanks for coming on this. And I mean, this has just been great. I love doing this Hall of Fame edition with Hall of Fame people because their careers have obviously been so good and so rich and so deep. And yours has certainly been, and you've done almost everything you can do in hockey. You got to be a broadcaster, I guess, after this, because that's the one thing you haven't done yet.
Yeah. No, well, I again, my mission, my goal, obviously I want to win the Stanley Cup again, and that would be that, for me, if we could do that here in Detroit, would be, something I'd be incredibly proud of. And, so we're going to continue to work towards that. I got, a lot of friends in broadcasting and that. I'm not sure I'd be very good at it, but you never know one day. I like being in the game one way or the other, whether, I like being around the people in hockey as you did. We grew up with this. I've been doing hockey's been like my life since I was really started watching as maybe a 4-year-old, playing as a 5-year-old. So I want to be in the game. And, when I retired, it's, what do I want to do? And I'm like, geez, I want to stay in hockey. And so I'd like to hang around, but my goal is to win a cup here.
Well, we wish you good luck, and we'll be watching all season and keeping our fingers crossed for my alma mater there in Detroit. And thanks for Steve for taking the time I know you got a preseason going on, and we appreciate you ducking out to do this with us.
My pleasure. Yeah, we afternoons of game days are a lot of times quiet, so good time to get things done. Good stuff.
Thanks so much, Steve.
I enjoyed speaking with you. Good to see you.
Thank you. You've known Steve Yzerman for 42, 43 years, and in the interview that we had done with him, he literally took us through his entire life, starting from when he was age 4 and first started realizing an appreciation that he had for the game.
And it was really cool when he went back at Cranbrook to that rink that he'd originally first skated on when he was a 4-year-old. And he said they've kept it in great shape, but it looked exactly the same. And those are neat things to do when you're older, that you go back and see the arena you first skated in. I got a chance to do that myself, and it was really cathartic.
One of the areas that we didn't get in depth with was his international play. And he'd won a Canada Cup with Team Canada in 1984, Olympic gold in 2002 in Salt Lake City. And he was also the executive director for the gold medal winning Canada teams in 2010 and 2014.
Yeah, he had a great run at Olympics, and Hockey Canada was always very confident putting him into those positions.
Great show. He was a great guest, and I know somebody that you're going to stay in touch with for a long time.
Well, it's already been 42 years, so I got to keep it going.
All right. That'll do it for our show for today. But we have another Hall of Fame guest upcoming. Our next guest, 3-time Stanley Cup champion as captain of the New Jersey Devils, and perhaps the greatest open ice hitter in the history of the NHL, Scott Stevens. So we'll speak with you then.
Thanks for joining us on the NHL Wraparound podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to stay up to date on all the NHL action.